Greetings and welcome to another edition of Montpelier Connection. I'm State Representative Mike Mrowicki from the Wyndham 4 District, Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster. And I'm here at the State House. The session is about 9 weeks into the 2022 session. And we're trying to keep people informed about what's going on and also look at the issues that are informing what we're doing here at the State House. And I have a special guest here today. It's my former district mate here, and now a candidate for the Vermont Senate, Nader Hashim.
Hey, Mike, it's good to see you. Thanks for having me here.
Good to see you. It's good to see you. It's good to see that you're ready to get back in the saddle here.
Yeah.
We sure can use you here. You did some great work when you were here. I know you're still doing some good work outside the State House, but we look forward to being able to help you get here and working with you.
I appreciate that a lot, Mike. Thank you.
There's a lot going on here.
See that.
Even beyond COVID, it was a busy time, and pretty much COVID is the lens we see everything through right now. Things are looking a little better right now. We hope that continues, but we don't know. So the safety procedures we have to keep taking have worked. We've been in the State House now for 3 weeks. We mask, people test. Most of us are vaccinated, and we've only had 3 positive cases in 3 weeks. And as you know, we work pretty closely here.
Yeah. No, I remember back when I was up there and COVID was just kind of a rumor. You know, people were talking about it. It wasn't even in the United States yet. And, just the State House was packed with people and, visitors, lobbyists, just everybody, shoulder to shoulder. And I was very amazed that it didn't turn into a petri dish pretty much.
Yeah. Well, we do call it the petri dish.
Yeah.
Sometimes we call the State House the beehive, and other times the petri dish, because things go through here pretty fast. So a lot of things that we are working on here could use some pushes too. And some of the things that were problems before COVID have been amplified into crisis state right now. And one of them is housing. At every level, except for the high end, very wealthy, Vermont has become a desert for housing at various levels. And what are your thoughts on, is this an important piece for you to look at?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think?
Without a doubt. Yeah, without a doubt, housing is, one of the top 3 priorities for me. Leading up to my announcement for Senate, that was, I was talking to a lot of different folks that I know, and the number one thing that folks have been talking about is housing. And, it's housing all across the board, pretty much as you mentioned. And I think that we're finding ourselves in the current predicament because of a lack of investment over a number of decades. So, hopefully we will be able to use some of the ARPA funds to kind of foster some, the creation of some housing, both for low income and middle income families. And, I think we also need to make sure that we're looking at the long-term impacts of that, because we don't want to build houses that are going to collapse on people's heads in 10 years or so. We want to make sure we're building quality houses.
Yeah, you bet. And it's one of the things where the housing trusts right across Vermont have done an amazing job in putting up quality housing. And, as an example, Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust puts housing out there. There's a project in Putney they're working on. The income range for that is from $16,000 to $70,000. So that is an example of housing that wouldn't be built otherwise. And they do good jobs. They do buildings that are energy efficient, and they serve Vermonters, and it helps build up that stock, which we have to do. Vermont is the next piece we want to talk about is workforce, and the lack of housing is really impacting our workforce.
Yeah.
How do you see that?
Yeah. So, when it comes, it's kind of like, it's this paradox because, we want to get good housing built, but in order to get good housing built, we need carpenters, we need electricians, HVAC technicians, and so on. But in order to get that workforce here, the number one requirement when somebody's looking to move somewhere or establish themselves with their families is finding a house. So, I think that we have to figure out how we grow the workforce in this area or all across Vermont, specifically the trades. I feel like the trades over the years, there's this sort of stigma that's been created that, if you don't go to college and you study a trade, you're not very smart. And I think that's a really bad stigma to create around the trades. I think that, more specifically, we need to find ways to reduce the costs to entry and make it easier for high school students to explore these different options. And also, reducing bureaucratic red tape that, prevents folks from getting licensed in a timely manner.
One of the things we've been doing here with the Office of Professional Regulation, we're trying to do that. And the other thing we're doing is to try and relax our credential transfers when people are coming from other countries.
Oh, yeah.
We've been having people from other countries come to Vermont for a while and realizing that their credentials don't transfer so easily. So we're trying to lighten the requirements on that because people are qualified. They might not meet exactly what we're looking for here.
Yeah.
But they can practice in some areas. So those are good points that we need all of the above too.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of my aunt. She came here in the 90s. She was a dentist in Iran, and she went to medical school there. She had been operating her own practice in Iran, and was a skilled dentist there. She came to the US in the 90s. None of her credentials could transfer over, so she had to go through medical school all over again, dental school. It took a long time, but she's finally back to where she was in her practice in Massachusetts. But I'm glad to see that we're making that change in Vermont, where whether you're an immigrant or a refugee, you're able to transfer your credentials. So that's awesome.
One of the things Curtis Reed has been saying from Vermont Partnership is that in many areas, if we're looking for workers, we would do well to reach out to communities of color and say, come to Vermont. Make the effort. He said, they'll come. And I think that's something that you've been working on with your work with the NAACP and the Bright Leadership Group. Yeah,
for sure. We're, the main theme is, how do we make Vermont an attractive place for people of color to settle down and, establish roots here. And, a big part of that is not just making people feel welcome, but making people feel as if, they can engage with the culture and, that they have other people to communicate with and interact with who come from similar backgrounds as they do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One of the things that we keep talking about here is we passed the proposal to the clarification of the language on slavery, which will go before the voters, just like Prop 5 will. People have been asking me, so why are we doing this? Why is it important for us to go back and revisit that language? And I wonder if you have thoughts on that.
Yeah, it is important. I mean, the Constitution obviously is one of the most important documents for our state government. And when you have language that alludes to allowing slavery and indentured servitude, you just got to ask yourself the question, if you were a Black or brown person and you knew this was in the Constitution, would you feel welcome in the state? Would you feel safe in the state? Obviously slavery is outlawed. We know that. But if these vestiges of slavery are still left in such important documents such as the Constitution, is that a reflection of modern day values in Vermont? The answer is no. And so it's definitely good that we have the opportunity to revise that and fix that issue. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important to remember that this affects all of us, but it's especially important if we want to, for the people of color who live here, and if we want to attract people of color, if we want to attract what we what many of us are reminded now, the global majority.
Yep.
So you've done a lot in the realm of racial and social justice. The Social Equity Caucus misses you.
I miss them too.
But we've done a lot, and it's one of those things that we appreciated. You helped get started here. Your work certainly hasn't stopped there, but you still continue to be active in the NAACP?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. NAACP, as well as the Bright Leadership Institute, which you mentioned earlier. For those who don't know, the Bright Leadership Institute it's a new nonprofit organization that is used to train Black and Brown people, or members of the Indigenous community as well, to run for office, to participate in civil society, like grassroots organizations, or to start up nonprofits themselves. And so, with the help of the NAACP, as well as other elected officials like Keisha Ram, we put on different classes over the course of 6 months to train folks. It's everything from how to raise money to how to preserve your mental health, and these are all important elements. And we definitely hope to see some folks on the ballot from our recent cohort.
Just a little tangent there. The name Bright Leadership, is there special significance for using the term bright?
Yes. So Lavinia Bright, she was the first African-American legislator, female African-American legislator in the Vermont legislature. And so to honor her, we came up with the Bright Leadership Institute.
And when did she serve?
Drawing a blank on it at the moment. Yeah,
20th century.
Can't remember off the top of my head. Yes, 20th century.
Which seems like such a long time ago now.
Right. Yeah.
20 years into this century. So thank you for that work. It's one of those pieces where it's important to state your beliefs, set the intention, but also put in action.
Yeah, walking the walk.
Walking the walk, walking the talk. So one of the other things that's important to us this year, and I know it's important to you, is climate action. The time for talking is over. I don't think anyone can dispute the science, although some people will try.
Yeah.
That we need to take actions, even locally. Like last year, last July, we had 18 inches of rain in our area, and we had one storm that flooded out 12 roads in Putney, including a bridge that eventually cost us almost $500,000 to replace. This is going to become a regular thing if we don't do something now. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's definitely, for lack of a better word, it's very troubling. I'll say this. A couple weeks ago, my daughter was looking a little sad one night, and she's almost 12 years old now, and so she's really watching what's going on around her. And as she was getting ready to go to bed, I asked her, I was like, "What's up? Is anything bothering you?" And she asked me, "Is there anything that we can do to stop climate change?" And there was a part of me that was like, we're not going in the right direction right now, and we need to do more. But obviously, I'm not going to fill a 12-year-old with dread right before bed. So I said, yes, there are things that we can do. It really requires holding politicians accountable, holding adults accountable, holding corporations accountable. And, there is a chance to still turn things around. It's not the end of the world yet, but we're creeping closer and closer to having, climate change affect us in such a way that it'll be irreversible. And so, none of the other stuff that we do will really matter if we're not able to inhabit our own planet. So I think that, when it comes to climate change, specifically in Vermont, we have to look at increasing access to public transportation, because I know that Vermont, the largest contributor to carbon emissions are personal vehicles. So we definitely need to look more at public transportation, as well as preserving forests that sequester carbon. Oh, and also subsidies for electric vehicles, because one thing we also have to consider is not everyone's going to have access to getting on a train, for example. If you're disabled or if you're living in the middle of the woods, it's going to be hard if you don't have a car or a bike, or the ability to get to a train station that's 5-10 miles down the road. So, some folks will need personal vehicles, but we also have to look at increasing subsidies for folks to be able to afford electric vehicles.
One of the, tying back into the housing, Vermont is offering up a policy of smart growth for what future development looks like. And what they're trying to convince people is that we can't keep sprawling out, that clustered village development is the way to go. And one of the things that does, it promotes less driving. And if you don't have to drive 5 miles just to get into town on a daily basis, that really adds up. You mentioned agriculture too, and forestry. Agriculture is 30% of the Vermont economy. It's a huge thing, but it's also, as we're learning more and more, it's an important part of climate actions. How we sequester carbon, how we put in place some agricultural practices that are going to help keep carbon in the ground. And forestry is a big part of that. There's a move now to change the current use program. And that's a program that says manage your forest well, and we'll give you a tax break. And some people are pushing to change that. So there's not the requirement anymore to do regular culling out. So we're not taking trees down at a time where we need all the trees we can get to take carbon out of the air. Any thoughts on that?
That's something I want to learn a bit more about. I haven't heard of that specific topic until our conversation now. Yeah. I think that one, we do need to preserve our forests, but also preserving forests involves a sort of active involvement. When you have arborists going in to inspect trees and remove trees that might be diseased, that sort of thing. Yeah. But also protecting certain tracts of land from being unnecessarily logged and removed.
Yeah, we know that fragmentation really hurts wildlife.
Oh yeah,
both flora and fauna. So that's an important thing. That I think there's a concept they're now calling rewilding, yeah, where you don't want to go in and touch things too much. And Vermont is 70% forest, so we're in a good position. But we certainly want to encourage other states to do this too, so Vermont can be a leader. And reality is that, as I said, ag and forestry can be leaders in climate action too. So we only have a few minutes left. What are the other things you'd like people to know about what you're doing or what you'd like to be doing?
Sure. So
come a year from now, being in the State House.
Yeah. So, when I was a state representative, my priorities going in, had to do with, racial justice, social justice, preserving reproductive rights, and also working on climate change. And, those are things that I still hold near and dear to my heart. I think that, when we're talking about things like housing, we also are still talking about social justice and racial justice. And, a lot of people like to talk about equity, and that is something that you can't look at equity or justice in its own little silo. It's something that crosses over and intersects all sectors of government. So you need to look at all sectors of government with that equity lens. So that's one thing that I hope to carry with me, hopefully, into the Senate. And I want to just share that, my experiences from when I was a state trooper were experiences that really helped to shape how I operated in the State House as a state representative, I saw a lot of different types of poverty, a lot of mental health issues, a lot of domestic violence. And, I was able to take that knowledge and transform it into legislation that got signed into law, surprisingly unvetoed by Governor Scott. But, I'm glad we got things signed into law. And, I want to take that same knowledge and apply it into the Senate. From my experiences and understanding, the senators seem to need to have a much more generalist approach. They're on two committees. They're also covering a much larger constituency. And so, yeah, those are my thoughts. I really hope I get to serve again. I know that, it's really important to me that I make sure to listen to folks, and that's why for the next 2 or 3 months, we'll be going on listening tours. I never want to be a candidate or politician who assumes to know what people need or want. Needs and wants, they change over time. And, being a legislator is a collaborative process. It doesn't end, the listening part, it doesn't end after Election Day. So I want to continue to keep people involved.
It's certainly something I can tell from your time here is that you learn quickly that collaboration is how you get things done. It's the coin of the realm here, how well you work well with people. And you did a great job when you were here with that. And
thank you.
That's why I'm looking forward to having you back here.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Mike.
We're about out of time here. I've got to go to work. You've got to go to work. So I do appreciate you taking the time this morning before work to share with us, and hopefully we'll be seeing more of you, and best of luck.
Likewise. Thank you, Mike. I'll see you around.
Okay. Take care.
You too.
Thanks to you for watching, and thanks to all the people back at BCTV for bringing news from Montpelier and the State House back to you in Windham County. Until next time, bye-bye.
La 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 la.